Hi, everybody. 6 months, it's in the books. But I'm pretty proud of what I've been, able to accomplish over the 6 months. And, you know, from, doing the podcast, putting myself out there, and then, continuing to do the work. And I'm still continuing to do the work. And, learning how to navigate business and all that stuff. So, for people that don't know who I am, my name's Thomas James. My family calls me, by my middle name, Sean, which is part of my middle name, LaShawn. Um, so, yeah. What, what I've been able to accomplish is, basically, really putting myself out there and really putting my nonprofit out there. And for a lot of people that don't know, I am a nonprofit founder. Um, I can say I'm playing the role of executive director or president or whatever you want to call it. And that's on top of my 9 to 5 job at working at Walmart. So so yeah. So a lot so Something else too that people don't know is, I have an associate's degree, general technology, and 3 certificates, which is architectural design, mechanical design, and basic design, which is CAD, like CAD modeling, which is like Autodesk, SolidWorks, stuff like that. And then with architectural, it's like Rivet, which is basically like the architectural CAD software that they use if if you're trying to draw out a house, and you just putting the blueprints together and all that stuff. And then with the mechanical design, that's basically go back to Autodesk and SolidWorks. And base and yeah, so back to the 6 months thing. So like me putting myself out there, and then also too, I've been talking to people, and I'm trying to jumpstart a a regional program in Texas called NRL Texas, or I might switch it up and put NRL South Texas, something like that, because from what I recently learned, there's somebody else that that's out there, with with the National Robotics League that's trying to start something in Dallas, and I think that's cool too. And so yeah, I'm just trying to bring something to South Texas or San Antonio, Austin, or you know, if I can include Houston too, that's cool, that's fine by me too. Um, so I start trying to do something with the NRL or the National Robotics League. And basically what the National Robotics League is, it's basically a program that the National Tooling and Manufacturing, or National Tooling and Machining Association, that's what they come up with to basically introduce kids to a career path in manufacturing. And also too, they do battle box competitions, which are so the weight class they go with is a 15-pound robot, or as they call it, I think the dog weight class. So that's what they roll with. And yeah, I'm just trying to have a regional program out there um for the kids to enjoy. Just give them another alternative. 'Cause I really think, and it started out with like one question I asked a while back: can combat robotics be educational? And I reached out to a few people, and asked them the question because I was just curious to know, and I got my answers, and that's how it kind of started. And also to the Gundam modeling, you know, like that all started with me going to Anime Tokyo and going to a Taku Cafe and seeing all these Gundam model kits you know that it was cool because that's why I grew up on when I was little. Just snap fitting like freaking action figures together, and and one of my favorites that I always had liked that I had when I was a kid was I had this little model kit called the Gundam Epion, and there's something about that Gundam that I like a lot. And the same thing with BattleBots and that stuff. My favorite robot was Sir Killalot. There's something about that robot that I freaking love. And it wasn't on BattleBots. It was on another show called Robot Wars. And I grew up on that too. And and yeah. And so yeah, that like I said, National Robotics League, they deal with the 15-pound robots, and they introduce kids to a career in manufacturing. And another thing too, this is my personal program. I'm trying to start up something that I briefly explained in the podcast called the Tech Gladiator Challenge. So it's basically 1 pound robots and 3 pound robots. And the 1 pound robots had two different descriptions. Weight. Well, it's the same weight class, but there's a plastic weight, and then you got a full combat one, which is all the metal stuff, which all the real stuff where you see sparks and stuff. So yeah, then the 1 pound robots they call that ant weights, so it's like the size of a hand. And then they have the 3 pound robots, and they call them beetle weights. That's almost like the size of a hand too. So from what I gathered from the BattleBots community, those are like the two safest weight classes. Because it's not going to hurt nobody, and plus the arenas for it. If you build it, not stuff, you know, it's not going to cost like 10K or whatever. And then also building the robots, it's not really going to cost you like your arm and the leg. I'd probably say know 1,000, maybe a little cheaper than that, depending on what parts you could find at your local hobby store. And I know in San Antonio there's a few of them. Because I've been to a few of them like a while back. I even been to the maker space called 10-Bit Works. Shout out to them. I did visit them like a few years ago when I was like exploring the idea. And yeah, like I said, just go to your local hobby stores like Hobby Town USA, and I forgot the one off of dang, I think there was one off of Bendera Road, but I forgot the name of it. But yeah, yeah, you're gonna find a lot of your parts there. Um, and then for your Gundam kits, like I said, go to your local anime stores. Also, Hobby Lobby, they got it. Hobby Town USA, they got it. Just go to your local hobby stores. You'll find what you need. And as far as like 1 pound or 3 pound robots, and then also too, I've been talking to a few people within the robotics communities that also sell kits, like Repeat Robotics and Just Cause Robotics. I think Palm Beach Box, they're another one. There's a few of them out there that I've been talking to that can definitely show you like some parts or give you discount for parts. especially if you're like part of a program or you're a school district that's part of the program, and stuff like that. Um, so yeah. But yeah. Speaking of the other one, I call it the Robo Clash Challenge or the Robo Clash Challenge. My best, and it basically a Gundam modeling competition and program. So basically, it's Steam related, and the reason I call it Steam related because there's a lot of artwork that goes into that, and from the the Gunpla builder community, like the way they explain it, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of art detail and placement on that, and make sure you get out the nubs and all that stuff. So yeah, so I think that would be cool for kids too. And the research I came that I came across is like Bandai and them teaching elementary kids too about manufacturing in a way by you know dumpling building and all that stuff. So I've been doing my research too on how that's educational. And um and yeah and yeah, I just been reaching out to just for everybody, even people that I was working with when I was in first, or people that I might have you know heard about while I was when I was doing the vets competitions or the best robotics competitions. I've been reaching out, and also too, I've been reaching out to some of the people in the BattleBots community, stuff. Get their opinions, and technically, even though I not really new to the robotics, but I'm new to doing combat robotics because I've been researching it for so long. I'm just in the point. I just at the point of just wanting to do it. I mean, yeah, I have to have the funds, and the way the economy is, kind of, you know, kind of has you thinking, twice about it. But even though the economy is, kind of bad and not stuff, and you know, it, to me, it's not going to hinder what I'm trying to do. Um, and yeah, and yeah, I just been posting, you know, I've been posting stuff about Gunpla and combat robotics, and if you're interested, and stuff like that. And 'cause I do want to know what kind of interest is out there in the state of Texas, or if I can expand, hopefully by next year, what excuse me, what the state of South Carolina, what their interest is, and in other states, 'cause I definitely want to know. And and yeah, and as far as like I remember it was this dude named Alberto, and I'm cool with him too. One of my friends over there, gift kit. I remember when he said something like gala. I was like, oh no, I'm not one of those people with the gala stuff. I don't. Yeah, I might. There might be some people out there I need to network with. If I, do something like that. But yeah, but seriously, I'm just trying to. No, I really want to do like a little championship thing, and hopefully I can do it at the convention center downtown. And, I know that that's a lot of money, and by then hopefully I can get some sponsors. I can get people that's interested in the idea, and hopefully we all can work together to make this happen. And yeah, so I've been learning about being a nonprofit owner, executive director, um, and getting back into mechanical, you know, one of the things that I learned while I was in school, which was like mechanical design. And that's something that, while I was in school, between architectural and mechanical, I was more on the mechanical design more than the architectural design. Because when it came to architectural, like, I didn't mind drawing houses, but it bored me to death. Where when it came to mechanical design, I saw it as a challenge, and and that's what I like. So for people that like I said in the first few minutes about me having an associate's degree and three certificates, people probably be I know some of y'all are like, why is he working at Walmart? Well, he's too overqualified to be doing this position. And you know what? You're right. I probably am overqualified. Because if you think about it, and a lot of the people that I work with do not know this, is I work all throughout that store. I started out as a door greeter. I no worked the toy section. I was I still am a cart pusher, and so when it comes to like me knowing how to do the stocking, that's because I used to be in the toy section, or the dark reading, because that was like the very first job that they hired me for and all that stuff. And funny story about how I got hired as a door greeter is like when they like about 11 years ago, uh they I was doing an interview. They were about to put me at maintenance, and then they saw my pretty smile, whatever. And usually I don't really talk about my pretty smile like that. But they was like, "Oh, you got a pretty smile. We're gonna switch you to being a door host." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Didn't know how to do door hosting thing, and kind of learned quick after AP got on my behind a little bit, but yeah, and then when I was in toys, I had to learn that pretty quick. Um, and God bless Dad. No, I think about what Miss Sue told me about one time when I kind of was putting myself out there, and yeah, and yeah, yeah. I mean, me quitting the toy position ended pretty badly for me, but yeah. So yeah, so being a cart pusher, yeah, and yes, this I think this is like my third stint with Walmart because well, I left the first time. I left because of my mom and how she, her dying, and I took it pretty hard. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did take it really. I took it so hard that I did contemplate about suicide because I did not tell my sister this. I didn't even tell my mom's friend about this. But I really, really did blame myself for my mom's death because I felt like I could have did it. I could have did stuff differently to try to save her, and you know, I glad I took took time to get my sister. Back then, after my mom passed, I you know just trying to figure out, option between like, why did I choose her over mom, or why did I listen to my friend over help my mom, and and there was a lot of different thoughts that came through my mind. It's like, why didn't my, why didn't this friend check up on me when I was really really down, and yeah, it took me a whole year to get over my mom's death and everything, and yeah, that's what happened the first time. So second time, uh, I just wanted to go with the first Vista job. Plus, I had some health complications that that started, arising a little bit. I thought it was my heart a little bit, but I found out later that it was my blood pressure. 'Cause I think I was getting very, very stressed out at work, and you know, and it started, started to be, really bad for me. Till I just like, man, I gotta find me another job, man, because they stressing me out over here, and I'm just like, yeah, y'all just can't keep relying on me. Y'all gotta, call some other people. You know. So yeah. Um, but yeah, this is my third time in a little bit. And I still think about that doctor in North Carolina and what he said about I brought up my back issues and a little bit. 'Cause I don't really talk about my health issues as much, but no, when I said, that I had back problems, that I had like there was two times I was out for work because I had back problems, and that was true. I did call out for work because I'm sitting there looking at the damn ceiling like this, and because my freaking back was hurting so bad, and whatever, and yeah, and he was just telling me, the way I work and all that stuff, like it, like it could all be over, if something happens, that I shouldn't be doing. But yeah, but yeah, that's stuff that my job does not know. But yeah, um, no, hopefully, the next, last 6 months, hopefully, it gets better, and I can find. Because my goal for the last 6 months is to have 100 teams in Texas, 1,000 followers on the nonprofit page, 1,000 connects on my LinkedIn page. Yeah, um, yeah. So that's pretty much my goal, and my other goal is to get back in the gym, you know, and I do want to lose some weight and everything, but I don't want to lose my strength and everything because I gotta look for, I gotta look good for girls out there, But yeah, but no, but no, also too, but no, man, just be serious. I want to lose weight because you know I want to be there for my nieces, man, because you know as I said it in my last few videos, my my big my my big headed nieces, the 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 first two, they lost their dad, to gun violence. I'm just trying to be out there, to help them out the best I can. And then, with my baby niece, just trying to help my sister out the best way I can with her. Wherever like wherever they need, I'm there. And the same thing with my dad, man. If anything my dad want and needs or whatever, I'm there. Yes, that's I want to help them out because they helped me out. And same thing with my uncle, And my uncle doesn't know that I think about him sometimes, but there, my uncle has helped me out, when I first moved to Texas, and I would like to do something for him. And yeah, and yeah, man, that's basically I think that's basically everything. I think I covered everything. So yeah, another thing too, I forgot is me talking to my buddy, and yeah, man, we still gonna do the we still gonna do the thing, man. Still gonna do the thing. You know, still we wanna make that trip happen. You know, 'cause I do wanna explore different cultures, and you know, and see how that is, because you know it's kind of cool about Brazil and Christ the Redeemer, and the Great Wall of China, and some things that Japan has, and other countries, man. You know, yeah, I do want to know. I do want to know, because especially about the education too. No, because I see them out there doing Robo Masters, and First and Fats, and Gunpla or Gundam modeling. You know, I would like to check that out. See what I can do out there. Try to make the world a better place. And I think now I truly covered everything, and that will be my video. See y'all later.